Yeah, well, I suppose my identity was originally greatly influenced by my home life when I was quite young. Uh, my mother, as far back as I can remember her, was an invalid and she died when I was quite young. So that kind of changed the kind of life I might have had if I'm an only child, so that's perhaps a disadvantage in some ways. But it took me a long time, if you like, to get out of that. Uh, almost describe it as a disability of being an only child with a mother who was an invalid. It may be so, but it certainly influenced my latter life because my mother was invalided. I spent a lot of my time away from home, if you like, down in Wexford with her people who were farmers. So my young life, my teenage life, I spent school holidays down in Wexford on a farm, and it probably influenced what I did later on in life.
Agriculture?
Oh yes, certainly. That is, I suppose I was interested in two things. One was agriculture and the other was engineering. I was always interested in engineering oriented things. And I think I eventually decided to do agriculture in the university rather than engineering. And I think the final straw that changed me in that direction was a man called Johnny Collins. And he was the brother of the famous Michael Collins, actually, and he lived near us where we lived in Mount Marion. And I used to meet him occasionally, and he was always telling me that the only future in Ireland was in agriculture, so I was probably influenced by him. He was an icon, if you like. You know, it was very difficult in those were days. The time when I was making that choice was in the 40s. There was a war in Europe, so this country was very isolated. There was no future anywhere visible, either in this country or obviously in Europe. So it was an opportunity that I had to go to the university at the time, which was good, you know.
Yeah, you just changed one thing.
Well, I think as a youngster, I suppose, described as feckless would be a reasonable description. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't have any thoughts on the future, if you like. Maybe it was my generation that didn't think that way, but I certainly didn't. And of course, when I did finish in the university, there were no jobs available to people. But I was lucky. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, that they were looking for people in the Department of Agriculture here to work in Johnstown Castle in Wexford. And I went there, and that was my first real job, if you like. And I suppose my whole future hinged around that. It was a time when they were trying to regenerate agriculture in this country, and we were kind of the young enthusiasts. We thought we knew everything. We discovered that we knew very little, actually. but I think the people whom we were teaching taught us more than we taught them. Well, first of all, I met Nancy in Johnstown Castle. She worked there also, so we met there. And we were married in 1953, so that's quite a long time ago. And we were working there, and I was quite happy there. But I got an offer from the United Nations, if you like, to go and set up a laboratory. I'd been working in the laboratory at Johnstown Castle there, and they wanted me to go and set up another similar laboratory overseas, and we thought about it, and she opted to come. You know, it was just one of these things. But if you look back on our family, they all, you know, go back to my father's generation. There were 9 in the family, and all 9 of them emigrated. He was the only one that came back and reared a family in Ireland. So it must be in the blood or something.
To the sense of adventure, to go into the unknown, and
Hmm?
just to have a sense of adventure and. maybe-
Yeah, well, I suppose it's that maybe it's an example. I suppose, you know, when you think of what other people did when it was a lot more difficult to do those kind of things, and then you think it doesn't look so difficult.
would it be-
No, I mean, I think for me, and I mean, I give much the same answer as Nancy there. I mean, the family is everything to both of us. We're surrounded by family here, and we're privileged to be in that position. And it's everything is family-wise here, you know. I mean, the greenhouses here are only kind of an aside, if you like, but and we both worked in that. Nancy hauling buckets of tomatoes, you might imagine now, but that's the kind of things we did, you know. I suppose we do everything together, you know. That's what it's all about. Yes, I would think that is true, and everything leads to that. Because, you know, down through the years, okay, we've 7 families, you know, but down through the years, you know, what do? You work with them, you try to provide them with whatever they need, and maybe support them when they go a little off the rail, maybe, which they do.
Just be there for them. Yeah.
Did you ever think you were going to end up?
No, it's a huge pleasure, and I suppose a privilege, you might say, you know. It's kind of hard to explain because, you know, you have, in the situation I'm in, it embarrasses me at times because, you know, if I lift my finger and say I want this, there's 2 or 3 people come running to provide it. I mean, that's it, you know, because, and it's both a privilege and a pleasure, you know.